Welcome to another 49er edition of The Grueling Truth, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, a new interactive football app where you guess the plays of the offense and defense during a live NFL game and compete against others around the country. Go to www.gridironmo.com to learn more. I'm your host, Matt Andrew Scavage, for the 49er Weekly Show, and at this time I'd like to welcome in Dexter Carter, my co-host, Super Bowl 29 champion. How are you tonight, Dexter?
Hey, doing wonderful. It's great to be with you again, partner.
Excellent. Feel the same way. It was definitely another rough outing, but it is what it is, and we'll just I guess we'll talk about it a little bit. But you know, it's we kind of knew this might be how the season would go.
Yes, there's a lot of good information that's come across this week, and a lot of information to talk about pertaining to players, trades, benching. Man, it's going to be an interesting night.
Yeah, that's for sure. A lot happened this week, and later on we're going to have Jeff Deeney from Pro Football Focus on to talk a little bit more of some of those insider numbers and break a few things down. So, well, we'll just get right to it. First of all, the Rams game didn't look a whole lot different to me than the Seattle game. They lost 27-6. It looked, once again, very lethargic. Carlos Hyde missed the game. Anquan Bolden missed his first game as a Niner. And it just was not a lot happening. The offensive line played really bad. The Rams didn't do a whole lot early, but once Todd Gurley ripped off that 71-yard run, it was not feeling too good.
Yeah, we knew that Todd Gurley, if he continued to play the way he had played in weeks prior to, and really, I mean, literally the last about 6 games, he's really been tearing it up. So, you know, he's finding his lane right now, and there's not much anybody can really do about it. You know, they're playing well, St. Louis, as an offensive team, and Gurley is pretty much doing exactly what Jeff Fisher thought he would do whenever he drafted him, and going against the 49er defense, show some holes that have been there, throughout the season. And offensively, just can't get anything going when your top running back is out, and then you don't have Anquan Bolden and Cap, and that offensive line is playing the way they're playing. The offensive performances aren't going to be very, very good. And unfortunately, that came to fruition in this game, and it shows why only 6 points from the 49ers were scored, and why the Rams continue to excel and play well, as an entire team.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the Rams didn't have a great start. The Niners were actually able to do a few things, but as the game wore on, they just don't have what it takes this year. And when you're only scoring, I mean, how many times have they scored 3 points, 7 points, 6 points? It's happened a few times this year. And, it's amazing that Kaepernick was able to even get he didn't turn the ball over, but his passer rating is still just over 50. I mean, that's almost impossible to do when you don't turn the ball over and you're somewhat efficient. And that means he's not completing any passes. You can tell nothing is going right, and I think that's why the coaches feel they have to bench him. So, watching that game, there was just so many things that were wrong with the team, and it didn't take long, and the Rams didn't have to have a fast start because, all it took was just chipping away, and then once Todd Gurley ripped off a big run and they got a lead, you knew it was going to be really tough for the confidence of the Niners.
Right, and it's interesting, and we talked about it last week, when Cap doesn't have turnovers, but his numbers are still dismal and doesn't look very good. So it's going to be very interesting to see the performance of Gabbert in the same offense. I somewhat understand the coach making, Tomsula making the decision that he did. I don't want all the fault to fall on Cap, but at this point, you got to find some type of spark. And if you've got a sit your quarterback at this point, then you got to do what you have to do. But the offensive line isn't going to all of a sudden be, in the top half rather than the bottom half. Hyde, if he's hurt, he's not going to be back. If they're not going to throw the ball down the field or be able to throw the ball based on pressure, because one thing we do know is Gabbert has less maneuverability than Cap has. So we do know Gabbert is a quality backup. We do know that he's a serviceable backup right now. He's not in there to take the starting job. So I think all hopes, if that's what many, fans hope is going to happen, that's not going to happen. But I am interested to see if the game plan changes. Are they going to throw the ball differently than they did with Cap? So that's going to be very interesting to see if they're going to be able to put any points on the board. They're going to be able to move the ball any down the field. Is that line going to be able to, increase their quality of play? I don't think it's going to happen, but I think the most positive thing probably is going to be hopefully Cap would sit, be able to think about things, and just reassess his performance, why his performance is what it is, and, reassess his role in that offense. But it's going to give the organization a chance to reassess that too, because his future may be with the 49ers and it may not be. Sometimes players just need a change of venue. Sometimes the organization needs a change. And maybe the person that they're looking for, the player they're looking for, is in the draft, in this next upcoming draft. So we'll see. But I don't think it's going to be much more bright spot. And I don't think there's going to be any bright spots in this next game. I just think it's, unfortunately, how close are we going to be able to play this week in this game?
Definitely. As we move on to the next segment where we talk about the latest news of the week, it's the Rams game was pretty abysmal, and now, like you're talking about with the Kaepernick benching, what's going to happen with Blaine Gabbert? Now we get into it. Really, now it looks like we're in full rebuild mode. They're just, they're going to shake some things up, and they're just going to kind of see what it almost has a preseason feel to it, where it sounds like they're just going to be evaluating everybody. I mean, Tom Sula said that in his press conference after Sunday's game. We're evaluating everybody, including Kaepernick, just before he was benched. And you almost get the feeling like they're just going to see what they got.
And what's interesting, that comment confirms that they're in preseason mode. When it was preseason, it was even different for me because it was more of anticipation and excitement of, the new throwing motion of Cap and the new offense and defensive systems with the new coach and Tom Sula. What is he going to do? So it's like they were hiding a lot of stuff, and our expectations were high. We didn't know where those expectations should be, but we were excited about it. So It was even what they're in now is true rebuilding mode, true preseason mode, not knowing what they have. We thought they had. They thought they had, and we just were waiting on it to just explode. So right now, I think we both said they would be around 500 this year. And I think it hadn't been talked about a lot, but all of the players that were lost for one reason or the other, I think it was approximately 18 to 20 players. I know that I stated there's no way I think they can be more than 500 just because of the losses. There's not a team that I've known that can lose that many players for retirement, for whatever reason. And the quality of players that they lost, at least 6 of them, the quality of those players, how could they play at a level of championship form? So that's what we're seeing. That's what, if we think back, it shouldn't be a shock. The only shock to me is I really did think that the offense would, be successful in the zone read or the stretch offense, Cap's throwing motion. I thought all of that would be good, and there's no way I thought Davis and Smith and Anquan and Hyde wouldn't be productive. But then, the offensive line really had a long ways to go. And I think with the inexperience of the coaching and the coaching staff and the way they gel with the players and the play calling ability to put players in the right position, I think all of that obviously has come to fruition. And it probably is going to put the 49ers probably number one in the draft. So I don't think at this point that's a bad idea. They just need, I don't know if they need to do an evaluation of the scouting department because they've had some decent players come through. But I think this draft is going to be crucial to the 3 to 4 year makeover that's needed within this organization.
Oh, no question about it. This offseason is huge. They've got to make it right. And they got to at least get some of the building blocks and the foundation in place to build off of. I mean, they don't have to, win 12 to 13 games next year, although we'd love to see that. But they need to get something that let basically not just let the fans know, but to let the players know, hey, we're headed in the right direction. And right now that's not happening. So, as we get into the news, we had this week Vernon Davis was traded to Denver. Basically, they're going to be swapping 6th and 7th round picks for next year's draft and the year after, and I think they get an additional pick. So, to me, I like Vernon Davis. He's one of the most exciting players I've ever watched in a 49er uniform. Very, very good tight end when he's either healthy or when he's on fire. But he's on the other side of 30. He is a little bit high priced, and you did get the sense that maybe he's lost a little bit of focus over the last year and a half. I mean, last year the whole, being all worried about his brand and and all the stuff, the holdout really rubbed people the wrong way, and then to come in and after all of that, you'd think, and especially this year in a contract year, he just doesn't seem to have. He just doesn't seem to have the mojo, and he keeps getting hurt. But it was probably the right thing to do to give him a chance at another venue. Now he's in Denver. I think they have a real chance at a ring. But what importantly for the Niners is they get something for him, because he's going to be a free agent this year and he's going to go anyway. So I'm all right with the fact that they've at least got something for him.
I think this was a great move. I didn't anticipate it, but I think it's a great move for all parties involved because the 49ers got 3 draft picks. To me, 6th and 7th round draft picks, and they got 3 of them, I think 2 6 and 1 7. If they're true talent evaluators, they can find some very, very quality players in those positions if they scout the way that they should scout. So I think at this point in Vernon's career, I think those are good quality picks, and I think it's great for him to be able to rejuvenate his career. I guarantee you he's going to play better. He's going to be more healthy because, as you said, Vernon at this point in his career started worrying about personal things, and I think players at some point, and it's not being selfish, but I do think you have to worry about you because the organization, again, and I shared this story before, I learned very early in my career, what, and we're talking about a front office that knew what they were doing, a front office that not many people could question and have had success winning Super Bowls. But, when you get rid of Roger Craig, Joe Montana, Ronnie Lott, those guys, a lot of people question, man, what are you doing? But players at some point have to become selfish to a certain extent, not in a negative way, but they got to focus on their careers and their 7 to 14-year career because, one, it doesn't last very long. That's why I believe Vernon going to Denver is going to put a few more years on his career. I think he's going to be excited. They're going to throw him into that system. He's going to pick it up. He's going to learn it, and he's going to play well. And most of us are probably looking and say, man, he didn't do that in San Francisco. But probably because they're going to throw passes to him that was not thrown to him in San Francisco. So it's going to put him in a position to succeed. So I hope, from what I've seen, it's been positive. Most fans are thanking him for his service to the 49ers. And, 10 years is a long time. And at the end of the day, when his career is over, he's still going to be a 49er. And I hope he comes back and retires as a 49er. But I'm looking forward to him doing well in Denver, and I'm looking forward to the 49ers hopefully making some great draft picks with those 3 picks that they got from Denver.
Oh, definitely. Like you said, this is probably going to be good for both parties. I think Vernon will probably play very well out in Denver. Having Peyton Manning and having that defense and the way that the Denver's playing right now, it should definitely rejuvenate him, and hopefully he will. I wish him well. I hope he does well. Like you said, you do have to worry about your career. The NFL isn't necessarily going to be worried about your career when it's over, and you got to get all that you can now. And I understand that. I totally get that, and I wish him well, and I don't begrudge him for. It's not like he left. The Niners traded him, so I think it's good for both parties. And then, Colin Kaepernick got benched. We talked a little bit about that before. It's probably the right thing to do. It seems like the motivation behind it is to kind of give him some time to clear his head. And I think from what I can tell, it looks like the coaches believe in him. But, it's hard to tell what the future will be. Maybe when we get into our segment with Jeff, we'll ask him about that. But
yeah, it's kind of Matt. It's kind of hard to convince a player when they're benched that it's being done so you can clear your head. Because if that's the case, every starter on the team needs to be benched so they can clear their head. So Cap is taking it personal, and I think he should, because it surely isn't completely his fault. He can only really, in my opinion, they know what his skill set is, and he can only do really what he's being protected to do. Again, we don't have to go into the offensive line during this segment, but I do think, as I said earlier, I see why the coaches may have benched him. I really see it. But once that happens, it's really going to a point and place where you can never come back from it. So I don't think there's going to be a perfect time to say, oh, Cap, you know what, I think you've cleared your head. I think you're straight. Come on back. It's not going to happen. I think Gabbert has to do the best that he can. I think they need to play Gabbert, whether he's good or bad, because I think bringing Cap back in on the same team, the same offensive line, that's playing the same offense that it played when they benched him, it's going to be the same results, the same plays that it was before. And if they're smart, I personally would not rush Hyde back. Hyde is my future in the running game. Yep. And if he's hurt, I would make sure he's healed before I even think about bringing him back. So Cap won't have that weapon in his disposal when he comes back. So I think there's no returning from where they've gone. They benched him. It sounds good what Tomsula is saying pertaining to, hey, they want Cap to clear his head. But I think, this is just the beginning of the end. I'd be shocked if he comes back and have a successful remaining of his career with the 49ers.
Yeah, I think there's very good reason to think that. What you just said, there's very good reason to go with that line of thinking because, like you said, you don't just – everybody would get a chance to clear their head if that's all it was needed. It's probably at the beginning of the end. And it's unfortunate, but if it does happen, but – hopefully they can, get all they can out of the players that are going to be left for the rest of the year. I know one guy, the last part of in the news, one guy that's probably a little bit near and dear to your heart, as the guy who was supposed to be the star returner this year, Jared Hayne was released on, I believe it was Saturday or Friday, and he did clear waivers, which was really a surprise to me. I thought Dallas was going to get him, I really thought Seattle was going to try to get him since they were looking at him in the off season. But he did clear waivers, and he's back on the 49ers practice squad.
Yeah, and it didn't surprise me that he cleared waivers. The eyes that I looked at the situation through told me that the teams that may have been interested that you mentioned probably looked at it through the 49ers' eyes and thought, if the 49ers brought this young man in with no football experience and he had a positive preseason and then they release him at some point during the season, why would I reach out and get him? Because the 49ers must see something in his development. Not saying that he wouldn't one day be the player that we all thought he could possibly be in the when we saw him play in the preseason. But, with him being new to American football, his athletic ability is what showed us his potential. But the 49ers never pushed him and stretched him to learn everything about American football that he could. So other teams possibly thought that he had problems, learning the system. Maybe, there's something going on in the meeting rooms that showed that he was, I guess, not worthy of holding on to, and they put him out there on the waiver wire, risking the possibility to lose him. So other teams not picking him up didn't surprise me, but I'm glad the 49ers brought him back because I think the 49ers believe if he had a complete offseason and a full season, that his IQ in American football would grow. So I think his best spot is with the 49ers, and I think the 49ers are happy that they were able to get him back. So hopefully he can contribute some, in the remainder of this season, especially if Hyde doesn't come back. But obviously they brought in, a new running back this week because, once again, they can bring someone else in that can, acclimate himself quick to the playbook and be a lot more productive than what they believe Haynes would be, putting him and inserting him into the offense right now.
Exactly. I at this point, I'm looking forward to, seeing him, take a few weeks to, learn a little bit more, to just, get plays right and all of that. And then I'd like to see him get promoted to the roster, maybe after the bye week, at some point after the bye week, and just get him out there. He had nothing to lose. The guy's got so much raw talent. I'd love to see what he can do, especially in the return game. I think it would be good to get him some reps at running back, work on his pass protection and all the things that he's going to need to learn, as they kind of go through this, what's really an evaluation period the rest of the season. So hopefully
that's true, Matt.
He turns in.
Yeah, and something pertaining to him, excuse me, sorry for interrupting you, but
no problem.
You remember we talked about Kaepernick, his true skill is in the read zone, zone read offense, and how defensive coordinators eventually caught up with him. The only reason I would say slow down as much as you put Haynes in the lineup is because the more a player plays, especially whenever they're raw, as he is, defensive coordinators and those guys, i.e. Ray Lewis, those type guys that study film on players and every tendency that they have, and then you've got, just look at the 49ers division, Jeff Fisher and that defense, Arizona Cardinals and that defense, Seattle and their defense. If you're going to put him in there just because of his raw skill and say, hey, go do it, you know what? They're going to study film on this kid, and they're going to know his every move. They're going to know his every tendency. So,
True.
So I think, insert him periodically and let him continue to get acclimated. But trust me, if he gets in there, he'll have a couple of runs, a couple of big plays. But defenses and these skilled players that know what they're doing, they're going to read it, and they're going to, and you don't want his spirit destroyed right now in the beginning of his development.
Yeah, very true. You don't want him to lose confidence. You definitely want him to grow at a good rate. And, like you said, it probably isn't best to just, obviously we don't want to stick him out there the whole full time, but I would like to see him get a couple opportunities to return and at least see a few opportunities in the backfield. But, yeah, obviously you don't want to tip your hand too much. You don't want defenses to just light the guy up.
Yeah, and it would be great if the offensive coaching staff has shown the ability this year to place their players in a position to succeed. And so far they have yet to do that. So if they put him in the game to protect him and take advantage of his abilities, I don't think that can happen right now. So right now I think it will be a detriment to his development. So much. I'm not saying I'm like you. Put him in, and periodically and let him, just continue to, get acclimated to the game. That's great. But don't, throw him in there, let him play a whole game or half a game, because defenses, I think, will hopefully not destroy him, but they will figure him out.
All right, at this time, we want to get into another segment where we get into some of those Pro Football Focus numbers. On the line, we've got Jeff Deeney from Pro Football Focus. How are you tonight, Jeff?
Doing good, guys. How are you?
Good.
Doing real good. Well, as we went through a little bit of a review of the Rams game and a lot of stuff happening, and I'm sure, every week you go through all the numbers. And one of the things that really jumped out to me was when you tweeted out about the offensive line and, some of the numbers. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the research you did on those offensive line numbers and what you saw?
Yeah, we actually just published, we kind of do it every quarter, our kind of offensive line rankings. And the Niners actually were not last, believe it or not. We had them ranked 29th in the league. We actually had them around the middle of the pack as far as, yeah. We're not last. Yeah, I know. That's how things have, how far they've fallen these days. But we kind of had around middle of the pack as far as pass protecting, actually. But as far as the run blocking, they were actually dead last in the league. Really, with the exception of Staley and Staley's actually still been the rock solid guy on the line. He's, I think, our 8th highest ranked tackle in the league this year. But the other 4 guys have really been struggling. Boone actually started off the season well, but it's been struggling the last 3 weeks. I know he's been on the injury report, first with a shoulder and then I think with a knee this week. So that might have something to do with that. But the other 3 guys, which have taken a lot of flack all year, Martin and Devy and Pierce, have just been either at the bottom or very close to the bottom of the worst at their position as far as run blocking goes with their grades. And one of the stats I think I tweeted out earlier today was that the Niner running backs are averaging 0.97 yards per carry before contact, which is the worst number in the league by a decent margin. If you look at, if you even take Carlos Hyde out of the equation, it's even lower than that. I think Mike Davis is averaging, it basically is getting hit, is again 0.04 yards per carry before contact. He's basically getting hit at the line of scrimmage almost every play on average. So
right.
Not opening a lot of holes for those guys. And, obviously we lost Hyde and, we lost Davis for a while. So we were, scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as running backs it is, but they got no holes to run through either. So it's looking pretty bleak for the running game right now.
No doubt. And, when you mentioned, the big 3, Marcus Martin, Jordan Devy, and Eric Pierce, what at this point you can tell that they seem to be still platooning at right guard. I know that the first couple of weeks that Andrew Tiller was playing, I know he was rated out with a positive rating, at least for pass blocking. I don't remember if it was for run blocking as well. But at what point does Andrew Tiller just play rather than play? How does Jordan Devy even get in this lineup?
There's a lot of people asking that question. I think even going back to New England, who was, I think, stunned that we had started this guy to begin with because he's the guy who almost killed Tom Brady last year. But, I think since they started that platoon 4 weeks ago, Tiller has graded higher than Devy in our grading. He's got a minus 0.9 overall grade, which is just a hair below average. His pass blocking grade is 1.0. His run blocking is minus 1.2. So really right around average, in all facets there. Devy has a minus 6.4 grade. So he's outperformed Devy the last weeks since that, platoon has started. I know Chief Chris said in his press conference earlier today that they were hinting that there might be some more changes with the offensive line. So one of those might be Tiller getting that full-time gig at right guard. I mean, the other thing that might throw a wrench in that is that, Alex Boone didn't practice today. So I'm not sure what his status is for Sunday. And if he doesn't go, then, they both may get a full-time gig Sunday as it is. If Boone does go, then it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing at the right guard spot.
Right. Yeah, because if Boone can't go, that's going to be pretty disastrous. But if Boone's out there, I just can't see any way you go, let's just keep giving this guy another chance because, if you're going to bench Kaepernick, you have to bench Devy? You would think. He's literally one of the lowest graded guards in the league this year through 8 games. And I said Tiller's the least. Tiller's held his own. I think, it's been 4 games, so it's not a fluke. So I think he's done enough after 4 weeks to earn that job. Well, I know that earlier off the air, Dexter had mentioned something that's been going around Twitter and Facebook. I know I've seen it several times, and I think that he wanted to run some of those numbers past you.
Yeah, and speaking of cap and numbers, as Matt said, many of our listeners and ourselves, we've seen a graphic going around that's comparing arguably one of the MVP candidates, in the league this year, Cam Newton stats against what Cap stats are. And, if those of us that don't understand and know how to dissect quarterback numbers and the situation in which those numbers occur, it seems that, those two quarterbacks are pretty on par this year against each other. But I think, Jeff, with you and your specialty and your numbers, I think our listeners, deserve to have those numbers broken down, at least in a fashion to say that there's more to those numbers than what it seems. And there's a reason why Cam Newton is an MVP candidate and Cap is riding the bench this week. So I think if you could share that particular graphic that's going around, I think it would be interesting for our listeners.
Yeah, and I saw it on Twitter as well. I think somebody from NFL Network, and I can't remember who it was, actually had put it on my timeline at one point. But yeah, and I think the ones I saw were like the quarterback rating and kind of the numbers that compile the quarterback rating were pretty similar. And I one of the things I've kind of always said is that, quarterback rating, even though it's a quarterback number, it's kind of more of demonstrates the passing efficiency of the offense as a whole. And I think, obviously you can make a case that Kaepernick doesn't have a lot of weapons, not say weapons, but a lot of help around him just because the offensive line's been so bad. But I know Newton is just, really had no wide receivers there to throw to. They lost Kelvin Benjamin earlier in the year, and Funchess has come in and dropped a lot of balls. I know one of the stats I noticed was that, Cam Newton's had more than double the amount of drop passes than Kaepernick has this year. And, one of the things, and someone who deals with stats for many hours a week, and I'm probably guilty of this as anybody, that you can be very selective with your stats to kind of prove your point. I think this is kind of one of those cases. And it's one of the things that when we talk at Pro Football Focus, is that our grades that we have are more reflective of a player's performance in their stats. Because, for an example, if you take a couple of Kaepernick's interceptions, going back to the Arizona game where he threw those 2 pick sixes, those were really terrible throws that resulted in a touchdown for the defense, and those are about the lowest grade you're going to get on a play from us in our grading. Where if Cam Newton, and I honestly haven't looked at Newton's interceptions this year, but for example, if a player throws a pass downfield 15 yards right on the money and it bounces off the receiver's hands and a defensive back picks it off, both of those plays are an interception, and they're going to do the same thing to the guy's stats and their quarterback rating. But he may actually get a positive grade in our play if he throws a ball right, downfield right on the money, because it's not his fault that the receiver, bounced off his hands and then ended up being an interception. And that's not something the quarterback can control. So he may actually get a positive grade on that play, where Kaepernick's pick six will be a negative, even though they look the same in the stats. So, I mean, that's one example of sometimes statistics don't tell the entire story. But Newton is, I think, graded in our stats 8th among quarterbacks this year. We have him, as I'm stalling trying to look that up. 1 second. We got him with a plus 11.9 grade on the year, which is 8th in the league. Kaepernick is minus 16.1, which is 33rd out of 35 quarterbacks. Andrew Luck and Matthew Stafford are actually only two guys below him so far this year. So, they do have some stats that are similar, and those were the ones that guy, whoever made that graphic, which looks really nice, had handpicked. But I think going into some of our advanced data and our grading, the numbers are quite the opposite.
And I guess one number that is relevant is the win-loss record, and Cam Newton is surely in that category as MVP candidate when it comes to those numbers.
Absolutely, a 7-0. 7-0 looks pretty good so far.
Well, that's just it. They're not just winning because they're getting pick sixes or Jonathan Stewart's just ripping off long runs. Cam Newton is a very, very big part of why they're 7-0. And like Jeff said, I think these are very hand-picked, cherry-picked stats. Some of them are similar, but there's obviously more behind it than just a raw number.
And that goes to show you the evolution of the game, not just the game on the field, but the evolution of smart, intelligent, off-the-field individuals that can take numbers and start grading quarterbacks, grading positions differently than in the past. Grading a quarterback on, if he threw an interception, how that interception occurred. And, of course, grading other positions the same. So I think the evolution of what Jeff and his team is doing is awesome for the league going forward.
Yeah. Actually, one example now, I'm thinking about it from Monday night, is that bomb at the end, near the end of the game that Ted Ginn dropped. That's an incompletion for his stats and his passer rating, but I know for a fact he got a positive grade in that play because he threw a deep ball right on the money.
It was a beautiful throw. He just dropped it. It was right in his hand. It was perfect. Yeah. Well, before we let you go, Jeff, I just wanted to throw two really short questions out there and just to get your thoughts on them. Going forward, beyond 2015, who do you think becomes the starting tight end for the 49ers, and what do you think the future of Colin Kaepernick is? I realize the second one is definitely a guess. The first one might be a little bit more tangible.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a decent chance that the 2016 starting tight end might not even be on the roster right now, whether he's a draft pick or a free agent signee. I think, for the rest of the season, it's probably going to be Garrett Selleck, though I think he's going through the concussion protocol, so I don't know what his status is for Sunday. But I think he kind of almost really, the last few weeks, I don't want to say he was the official starter, but he was getting as many snaps as Vernon Davis was after Davis came back from the knee injury. So, but I think he'll take over that number one role, and then, McDonald will be the number two, and then we'll obviously see some more snaps from Blake Bell as well. And, they do a lot of three tight end sets, so I think you'll see Bell on the field a little bit going forward. And then next year, they'll have a decision. They got $40-something million in cap space, so they'll, if they want to address the tight end position, definitely can do that. And then Colin Kaepernick, that's the big question. I still think he can be a decent quarterback somewhere in the right situation with the right surrounding cast around him. I don't think at this point that's in San Francisco, one, just because of the mess this offense and just really unfortunate this franchise has kind of fallen into here in the last year. I think he's just one of those guys that needs a fresh start somewhere else if he's going to be successful. And I think, his salary, I think next year is $14 million. They have to decide on April 1st whether they want to guarantee that salary. So I think, they'll probably try and trade him before that. And if they can't, they'll probably just let him go. And as a free agent, let him sign elsewhere. I just don't think, I just think at this point they're probably, unless he comes back later this year and just somehow the light switch, flips on and he really starts doing well. But I mean, part of that's on him, but then I think part of that is, I don't think they have the offensive line right now where that's going to happen. So, I mean, I think he's probably going to be somewhere else in 2016. And, I mean, the way they're going, they may have a high enough draft pick to try and draft that franchise quarterback early in the first round.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, too. It does look like they almost seem like they could be moving on from him. And it's unfortunate, but I don't know, it might be the right thing to do. It's hard to say for sure, but you're right. In light of the situation, that might be what they're doing.
No, and I don't think they've done him any favors the last couple of years. I mean, some of this is on Kaepernick, definitely, but I mean, he's, if you look at, in 2012 when he came in the league, he had the best offensive line in front of him. And, 3 years later, now he has one of the worst, and I think that has a lot to do with, his fall in his play, and I think just, his confidence, like I said earlier, his confidence is shot, I think, at this point. He's just kind of a broken quarterback. So I think they'll probably move on, and, I think they're both juniors, so they still have to come out, but I think it's likely that they will, that probably Paxton Lynch and Jared Goff are probably the two guys, I think, if you're looking early in the first round, are probably the two targets.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for dropping by and for spending a little bit of time with us tonight. And always good to hear the work you're doing over at Pro Football Focus. And real quick for everybody, where can people follow you on Twitter?
Twitter is PFF_Jeff.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Jeff, and hope to have you on again.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care, Jeff.
All right. Well, it was always good having Jeff Deeney on from Pro Football Focus. A lot of good information there. I was really good that you brought up that graphic too, because I know that's been floating around, and probably a lot of fans have maybe some mixed reviews, maybe some looked at that and went, "Wow, that's crazy. How can Kaepernick get benched?" And probably others went, maybe there's something more to it. But it's good you brought that up.
Yeah, it's like politics. Anyone can take numbers and skew them in the form that best represents what they want to be seen. So I thought it was great that Jeff, who looks at these numbers and, has numbers that he looks at from an offensive line perspective, a quarterback perspective, and grades them as accurately as they can truthfully be judged. So I think the way he explained it kind of explains why Cam Newton and Cap are on different levels, although those numbers that the graphic that's been circulating showed makes it look very close, but it's not as close as the numbers showed.
Definitely. Well, as we preview the Falcon game coming up, there's everything, and you look at the way this matchup goes and the way the personnel that the 49ers are going to have. I mean, at running back, they're going to have Kendall Gaskins, and backing him up is going to be Pierre Thomas, who hasn't played football in, I don't know, forever. So it's it's going to be pretty lean back there, and the offensive line is what it is. You got Blaine Gabbert, Anquan Bolden missed practice today, so it's starting to look like maybe he's not going to play again. I don't know, but so you go up against a team like the Falcons, who they're coming off a tough loss to Tampa Bay. They're a good team this year. They're not great, but they're definitely a team that's still going to compete for their division and definitely a wild card. So I don't expect the 49ers to win this game, but I think more importantly, the question that I want to know from your standpoint, as someone who played the game, what happens, in a situation like this? Do do players, all right, because fans will start saying things like, well, maybe they should just lose the rest of their game so they can secure a number one draft pick. But I got a hard time believing players operate that way. I got to believe that everyone's still very competitive. They want to win. They want to do the most that they can. Then they also have to take into what we were talking about before about, you have to take care of yourself. You don't want to play bad. You want to do what you can to maximize your opportunities to, be successful and also to, pull in as much of a contract as you can, because that's your livelihood. So what do you think the players' perspective is and their attitude going into this game is, even though it looks like they're probably not even going to be in the game?
Well, the latter part of what you said is accurate, but there's absolutely no one in that organization, front office, players, coaches, or at least it shouldn't be, where they have the thought of wanting to lose the rest of their games to better position themselves for a better draft pick. No, that is not the thought. I believe they're still going into work and doing their very best. It was never their goal to come into the season and have the record at this point in the season that they have. That wasn't even a thought in their mind. So they can lose the rest of their games, but I promise you the competitive spirit is there. Now, there's very they're hurt now. Don't get me wrong. They're in a position to where they walk in there and they're looking for answers, and everyone is told, "Hey, do your responsibility." And it's like a puzzle. Everybody do what they're supposed to do, and we come together and we'll play the best ball we can. That is true, but right now they also know that entire organization is right now not in a good place. But right now it doesn't matter because Atlanta's flying into the West Coast and could have equally have won that game last week against Tampa rather than lose it, because they played very well, and actually Matty Ice played very well there in the fourth quarter, in the last few minutes of the game to, for Atlanta to actually win. But I don't think, San Francisco, regardless of what kind of preparation they have this week, how well Gabbert performs in the classroom and on the field, practice field this week, I don't think they're able to beat the Falcons. I think the Falcons are playing very, very, very good ball, one of the top teams, in the NFC right now, and I don't think that's going to stop this week.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Atlanta is, when you're in a position where you're still in the playoff hunt and even in the division hunt, it's just, and they're just a better team at this point, especially given the injuries and the state of the offensive line. It's going to be very hard to stop. I mean, Atlanta doesn't have the greatest defense in the world, and they even said that's why they wanted to play Blaine Gabbert this week, because it was against a weaker team. And unfortunately, they gave Atlanta a little bit of bulletin board material. That got back to them. But even, regardless, I agree that they're going to really try to win this game, but I don't see any way that they do win the game. So you just kind of hope to see, I guess you just hope to see good quality play from, especially the defense. I want to continue to see more from some of the younger guys like Quentin Dial, Hank Carradine, Eli Harold, Jaquiski Tart, some of these guys that are going to probably be around for a while. I want to see some quality play on the defense. I don't expect much out of the offense. It's really hard to see. Points are going to be a premium, but it would be nice to see them move the ball. But I guess we'll just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, I think the coaches have to devise a game plan that these players feel confident in. I think the coaches are the ones who need to be looking at film and trying to put together the best game plan that they can, because, one, I think Devontae Freeman at this point is playing about as good a ball, he and Gurley with the Rams, about as good of a running back as anybody in the league. I believe he's had 100 yards rushing, I believe 5 out of the last 6 or 7 weeks, and may even be leading the league in rushing. But I don't see that stopping. And Julio Jones is just a beast. Rowdy, is still a decent number 2 receiver, so he's playing well. But Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman and Ryan is just playing, at the top of their game right now. And on the defensive side of the ball, the secondary for the Falcons are playing very, very well. And I don't know what Gabbert is going to do from an offensive perspective to put pressure on that secondary, all those linebackers. So once again, it's going to be up to the coaches to get in the film room and put together a plan that give these players that aren't feeling very confident right now, at least from our viewpoint, aren't feeling very confident or looking very confident, putting together a game plan that give them a chance to compete on the field.
Right. Yeah, I guess that from this point on, we're just going to kind of hope for competitive play, and it would be nice to see some creativity in the game plan, and I know that's what I'm hoping to see. I'd like to see a little bit of a creative game plan. Don't just keep doing the same old thing. And I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the best thing that they can do for the offense, in my opinion, is have true 3, 5, 7-step drops and bank on your receivers running accurate slants, accurate post routes, quick out routes, throwing to the back shoulder, so Gabbert can feel comfortable, throwing, when he step at 3 and 5, 7 steps, it's coming out. And they just got to make the play. I think that's the best bet that the 49ers offense can have. And they've got to try to, convert, at least half of their third down conversions. 30% of the third down conversions will be great, but they've got to keep the ball away from Atlanta, because if they don't, the score could get ugly.
Yep. That's unfortunate, but that's a very, very strong possibility. Well, as always, good to talk to you, and hope to see a pretty good game this Sunday, and we'll see. We'll see what happens, and we'll just be ready to jump back on next week, and we'll talk about it, and hopefully, as the season progresses, we're all hoping that the ship can definitely get righted, but at this point, it's definitely the low point of the season. We just don't know, what's ahead, and it is a little bit dark right now.
It's only one way to go, and that's up. Hey, when you get knocked down, hey, look up, get up. And what we want to see in the 49ers now is, at least the effort, and put together a good game plan. Give the players a chance to succeed, even if they don't win. But they have to show the effort. 49er Empire, they're hanging in there with their team. And I'm just hoping that they at least have a competitive game this week so the fans can have something to cheer for.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us tonight. On behalf of Dexter Carter and Jeff Deeney, I'm Matt Andrews-Scabbage. You've been listening to the 49er edition of The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak, and we'll see you all next week.